Hey now! What is up, everybody? My name is Mike Brown, aka Review King MB, and I had to. I already made a video where I talked about the beginnings of X-Men 97, like the very first couple episodes, and I also gave a general overview of the entire animated series from the 90s, in case you guys are curious about that. But after spending all of these weeks watching each and every single episode, and after just now watching the finale, I felt compelled to make a video to talk about what I've thought of the rest of the season so far. Holy shit! Woo!
And stay down.
That's it? This show could have rested on its laurels. It could have relied purely on the nostalgia. Because let's be honest, if the show was just decent and if it felt like more standalone episodes, kind of like that one episode earlier on where Kitty Pryde got sort of locked into that video game world, that Mojo character, right? Like that felt like more of an episode from the 90s show. Specifically the tone and the scenario. If we had more episodes like that, it still would have been fun and fine and it would have been solid. But pretty much right after that, we get the attack on Genosha. And goddamn, did this show take a huge right turn. And for the better, right? Like, that was such an intense moment. That felt like such an emotional high point in the show for a lot of the wrong reasons, but it definitely got us, I think everyone collectively more invested in the story. And ever since then, the show felt like a bigger deal. You saw more and more people talk about it. You saw more people praising the show on just a different level other than, hey, this is fun. People started saying, no, this is just flat out good. Good writing. Good situations going on to see your heroes go through hardships. That episode especially, all of the death and destruction and what felt like an actual real life tragic event, you know? And even in the episode before the big attack, when you had Rogue and Gambit, seems like it was the end of their relationship. Rogue was going through a crossroads of not knowing who she wanted to be with. She was stuck between Gambit and Magneto. Magneto, because of his power, she's able to physically be with him. And the moment where she dances with Magneto, like in the air, and Gambit sees it and gets upset and leaves, I hated Rogue in that moment so much. I was like, you bitch. You know, like, you don't realize what you're doing to this guy, even though he's trying to just be the mature adult and let her go to be happy. But right in front of him, that was cold-blooded. And then right after that, Gambit dies. He dies in the most self-sacrificial, unselfish way that I think a hero could. And Gambit's always been a popular character, especially if you're somebody that grew up in the 90s, watched that show, or if you read the comics and you're aware of Gambit from there. But because he's never, well, besides X-Men Origins Wolverine, because he's never truly been in the live action films, I feel like his popularity was always at a certain level. This show only reinforced not only is Gambit beloved and popular, but his death was so tough and hard for so many people, especially for me. Like, something that I did not see coming, and I almost didn't realize how much his death would affect me in the way that it did. I was almost hoping, as cheap as it would have been, and ultimately I guess it's smarter that they did not do this, but I was almost hoping that they would time travel, they would undo it, they would somehow bring Gambit back, because the character himself is so fucking awesome that I wanted it. I need to talk about the whole Jean Grey clone situation. That blew my mind. I was only aware of this storyline from the comic books, but I never read it myself. So once it was revealed and once they started to do it and talk about it and sort of hint at when possibly Jean could have been switched by Mr. Sinister and he created the clone. Like, all of that was blowing my mind that they were willing and able to go that far, go that deep into X-Men lore. I mean, some of these storylines and ideas from the comics you would hear about, and I would think, oh, that sounds interesting, but man, we'll never get that in live action. We'll never get that in a movie because it's too out there. It's too intense and potentially too crazy, like only the right hands could truly make that work. And sure, this isn't live action, it's still animated, but I was severely impressed that not only did they do that, but then the Jean Grey clone named herself Madeline, went to Genosha, and she's one of the characters that died on Genosha. So that was crazy. The whole aspect of Cyclops still feeling love for her and not knowing how to truly just sort of end that, cut that off, and that bringing conflict between him and Jean, that was also very fascinating. The whole idea that Cyclops and Madeline's son was Cable from the future. Like, that was a great reveal, even though a lot of us knew that. Not everybody knows that, so they treated that very well. The whole aspect of Jean Grey kind of sort of being his mom, but not really. That too, like a lot of those character dynamics, again, for a kid's show. I think we're at the point now where we don't have to call this a kid's show, but very, very cool stuff there. Professor X coming back to Earth was something that I felt dumb not realizing that would happen. I, for some reason, thought like, oh, he died. Even though, like, he was taken by the aliens to the other planet, and they did say they were going to save him, but I just, for some reason, when the first episode of this started, I just sort of took into the fact that they probably just left him dead. No, he comes back. He sort of needs to get back into control. I like that he ultimately chose the X-Men over a potentially happy life with his wife, even though her family were kind of assholes to him. So there's that. Giving Storm her own side plot. I'm not saying it was the most exciting thing in the world, but I just like the fact that Storm lost her powers and then was able to find another way to get them back. It just gave her herself her own story and her own motivations to do on her own, which Storm has severely been needing something like that. Magneto being right. The fact that this show takes a moment to have other characters, not just Magneto, because obviously he thinks he's right, but another character say out loud Magneto was right about humans and about how much humans are assholes and about how much humans will never truly accept mutants and how that will... I'm not saying that everybody's going to agree with that or everybody will watch this show and feel that way. I'm sure some people would like to believe what Professor X believes, right? So someday, one day, we'll be able to live in harmony. But no, this show proves that Magneto was right. I love that that's kind of the stance and the direction that we decided to go with. Magneto did not die on Genosha. I originally thought that he did, but then again, it just felt like it would have been a weird way to kill him off while also killing Gambit off right then and there. And so the reveal that he was there and that he was captured, and then he believes now more than ever that he needs to just fuck this peaceful shit. I'm gonna go and wreck some shit. Like, I like that because now more than ever Magneto has a good point to him. Them recreating the moment where Magneto rips apart Wolverine's fucking metal, that was gnarly as shit. I'd always seen the images from the comic books of when that happened, and in the comics he killed him that way. And I love that they did it. I mean, they didn't kill Wolverine, of course. I think you can never kill Wolverine. He's just too popular of a character. But man, did they get pretty close. And once again, you could argue that just this one season, Wolverine has gotten the least to do. Mostly because we've already had so much Wolverine just in general from other mediums that having him take more of a backseat here and build up more characters, more of the other characters that deserve that screen time, I'm totally okay with it. I love the cameos. If you're somebody that's gonna argue and say there's too many cameos, too much nostalgia bait, I'm not gonna go hard arguing with you, but fuck it. I loved seeing characters like Captain America, or even in the finale episode, we saw glimpses of Iron Man and Daredevil, Cloak and Dagger even. Who the fuck was asking for that? I think Morph is a character that primarily exists. I mean, great for the representation, inclusion, and all that good stuff. That's great as well. But because he can morph himself, he's great to have even more cameos. He turned into Magic, who is such a like deep cut character. Juggernaut, which was cool, but when he became Mr. Fantastic for like a second in the finale, but when he became the Hulk in that one episode, fucking awesome. I'm pretty sure that when he becomes somebody else, he also takes their powers. So that's wild. That makes him even stronger and more intense than I even imagined. There was one episode where they showed a bunch of people on the TV screen and we saw more cameos. So just the fact that these characters, these villains exist. I'm talking about Baron Zemo or Doctor Doom. Holy fuck, I am itching and craving some Doctor Doom in something, and I'm hoping it's a lot closer than not. 90s Spider-Man, I had to talk about this. He only just dropped in for a second for one episode, but that was enough to, satiate me as a fan, and especially somebody that grew up on that 90s show. The fact that it was that one specifically, huge deal. But then in the finale, seeing that Peter Parker specifically with that design of Mary Jane brought me so back. Again, we're talking seconds here, but I am begging, I am pleading with Disney, Marvel Studios, since they're now behind this, bring back Spider-Man the 90s show. Give us Spider-Man 98, whatever you need to do to make that happen. I would be all there for it. Having Mr. Sinister and Bastion as the villains. I mean, Mr. Sinister never been in a movie before, live action, and so I like that he came back around. He made sense on the way that they used him, but he wasn't even or necessarily the main villain. I mean, Bastion took over. He was the guy that was behind everything. He was the brains behind the operation, and he was such a big threat for a character that I wasn't tremendously familiar with. I thought they did a great job of making him, next level. And I wonder if we're truly done with him. It would make sense for him to be dead after what they did, the Magneto Protocol, all those missiles. That was pretty wild. The fact that it created a giant asteroid coming down to Earth, and that the X-Men were willing to sacrifice themselves in order to save, again, humans and the world. It says a lot about those characters. I should mention really quick before we get too far, Jubilee has always been the punchline, right? Jubilee is always the character that people make fun of and say, oh, her fireworks. Oh, what is she going to do? What can she do? She's the weakest X-Men ever. I like that we kind of addressed it. I'm not saying they did a whole lot with her throughout the entire season. There's still room to grow. She's still only a teenager, and she had a potential romance with that dude. But I like that they had a moment where Bastion was talking shit to her, made fun of her, which is the way that everybody does. She acknowledged that that's kind of the go-to joke, and then she didn't back down. She fucking knocked the shit out of him. It didn't kill him, but man, it rocked him. And I just like that they didn't undermine her. They didn't undercut her. They let her have at least one badass moment right then and there. Thank you for that. Jean Grey revealing that she still possesses deep down the Phoenix powers. I mean, she can't control it. She says it's very dormant, or it's mostly gone, but she feels it. It also proves that it was the real, actual Jean Grey that went through the Phoenix Saga. So that answered a lot of questions. I also should talk about the newer costumes. A couple episodes ago, they sort of ditched the 90s costumes that we're used to. And I get it. They wanted to maybe freshen things up or do something that, in Cyclops and Jean Grey's case, more of a throwback to the original costumes from the comic books. But I still like the 90s looks. I would love for them to just go back, like Cyclops and Jean Grey, to get their original suits back. I didn't mind Storm's new look, or even Wolverine changing the colors a little bit. I don't mind that. And the cliffhanger was fucking wild, So obviously we know that they weren't going to kill the X-Men. But that was a good sort of moment, once again, for them to show that they were willing to die if they had to. But finding out that they were taken out of time and taken to different timelines, I mean, you saw that it's like they're not even all together. Some of them are in one time, the other ones are in another time. I did not expect that at all. I don't know how that happened or why that happened, but it's definitely something that makes me look forward to a season 2. You have one group who are in Egypt, 3000 BC, and the reveal that they're there with a younger version of Apocalypse is wild. I have no idea what we're going to do with that. And then you get the future, which, Cyclops and Jean Grey might be interacting with a younger version of their son. So that's pretty cool. Also, there was a quick post-credit scene that showed Apocalypse in present day going to Genosha, and it's all destroyed, and he finds a Gambit card. I don't know if that means that they are going to bring Gambit back, but he's going to be like a disciple of Apocalypse, so he'll be brainwashed. And I know it's like, well, we've been there, done that, but honestly, if it gets Gambit back, and then eventually they can sort of get him back in the groove, I'm all for it. Because Apocalypse is a character that he wasn't going to be gone forever. I appreciate their sense to not throw him into the first season, that he's clearly just somebody that will play a bigger part later. I loved X-Men 97. I thought this was great. I just think that they had balls to take this show and this mythology into darker places that was highly welcomed by most of the community, especially myself. So guys, let me know in the comments below if you too saw X-Men 97. I hope you did, because I spoiled a lot of it. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. And what do you want to see going forward? What are some of your thoughts, predictions, whatever? Later!